everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 18 of Blue Lock. And I'm so excited because we last left off. It is nerve-wracking. We have Nagi and Isagi and Barou versus Chigiri, Kunigami, as well as Reo. And Reo and Chigiri and Kunigami's team are leading 4-3. And they only need one more goal to score until they take Nagi and leave Isagi and Barou behind. Now the question is, what's going to happen this episode? I don't know. My heart tells me that Isagi and Nagi and Barou are going to come up from behind and win and be able to take Chigiri. I think that's who they're going to end up taking with them to the next round and get one step closer to Bachira and Reen and Toki and Anyu or Aryu. But my heart's also saying this show has told you that it could very well be that Isagi loses. So I'm like, I don't know. If Isagi gets left with Barou, that would be very intriguing and interesting. But then what do we do with that? Like, is Isagi going to be able to make his way up to Bachira? And honestly, I thought about it. If they lose and Chigiri and Kunigami and Reo pick Nagi in advance and they meet with Bachira and Bachira is like, we're not ready for you. We're going to wait for Isagi. And then the other three are like, why do you keep waiting? He's not going to make it. And Bachira's like, don't question my faith. So we're on episode 18. We have lots of episodes left. But with this series, since it's not following the traditional sports anime format, you just don't know what's going to happen. So that's exciting. I like that, you kind of can't predict where the story's going. So who knows, right? Who knows? But we do have some comments I want to talk about before we start this episode. I decided I wore this rainbow shirt today to work, and I was like, you know what? Blue Lock has all the colors of the rainbow. We have Isagi's green. We have Chigiri. We have either Barou. Well, Chigiri or Barou could be the red. Kunigami is the orange. Isagi is the green, and we'll just say that Nagi is the blue, and then poor Reo is just left out. Reo is the navy that is everything else, right? So I got some comments I want to talk about before we start this episode. Alexander Q noted that Isagi's hidden potential genius of adaptability is a really nice main character power. And yeah, we talked about this in her comment, that it is really cool because, a lot of times main characters are like, oh, I can kick really far, or I can jump really high, or I can, Sakuragi in Slam Dunk can jump really high and rebound. Shoyo has the amazing power to fly. You have all these main characters that have certain potential talents, but they're all very physical. And Isagi's is not necessarily, it is physical in that he has to adapt and he's devouring these powers of other characters, but it's also a very internalized potential. And it's something that I liked Alexander Q pointed out. It's very easy to waste. Like, it's easy to not recognize it. Like, how long has Isagi had this hidden genius inside of him? And he was just squandering it away playing soccer with this like mid-tier high school team. And he may never have found that potential within him had he not participated in Blue Lock, right? And I think that's really interesting. And I also kind of think it's kind of inspirational because it sort of ties to the audience, the readers. It's like you as a reader, you may have untapped potential that you don't even know about. But until you go out and try to find out what that potential is, you may be sitting on a gold mine that you don't even know about. And I kind of like that, right? Because no offense, as much as I like Haikyuu, white girl can't jump. And she knows she ain't gonna be jumping like Shoyo. She has no coordination whatsoever. And so a lot of times in sports anime, you're like, well, that's nice, but I don't have that ability. Isagi's is kind of a cool main protagonist ability in that anybody could have it. You can adapt to anything. Adaptability is something all humans possess. Maybe not to the level that Isagi uses it for football or soccer, but we all have the ability to adapt to adversity. And I like that message that this series has, is that it's about adapting to the situations around you. I'm like, that's so cool. I love that. It's a little heartwarming message in the middle of this doom and gloom despair battle soccer anime. Right? I like it. So thank you, Alexander Q, for that. Wim is our moderator for Blue Lock and had some nice comments as well. I liked the explanation that Barou calls Nagi Hassleman because Nagi's catchphrase in Japanese means bothersome or troublesome. I did notice in the last couple episodes that Nagi does say the word hassle. It is translated, and I was like, maybe that's why he calls him that. So that makes a lot of sense, right? Okay, so I think I said this last episode or back in episode 16, but I do see in Ego's speech about being dedicated and living for soccer. It's interesting because Ego, on the one hand, relates a lot to Isagi, or I think views Isagi as like a poster boy for Blue Lock, which he is. But Ego's speech about being completely dedicated to soccer and like living and breathing it is very much like Reen's. Totally. And that's why I've been saying it's kind of funny that Reen doesn't like this whole Blue Lock setup, because I'm like, you're literally living the same philosophy as the guy that created the system. So how ironic. But then Wim was saying that, you know, Henri is kind of like Isagi, in that Henri is all about like about cultivating Japan's next top striker and making the best striker in the business. They're looking at it from, Henri looks at it from like a career angle, which is kind of like what Isagi does. And I was like, yes, that's very true. And then Wim was like, so Isagi and Reen ship. Look, guys, let's stop right here. I cannot tell you how much the Discord is trying to push. And you're trying to gaslight me into liking Isagi and Reen. I'm like, I've told you all very diligently, the more you push me to try to like Reen and ship Reen and Isagi, the less I will, and the further I will get from doing so. But I was like, I see what you're doing. You're just like, I don't know. Maybe it's just like Isagi and Reen. They're just like, quit trying to ship them. We've barely seen Reen. I've made some assumptions about Reen in my opinions, but y'all are trying to push me to like this character and ship him with Isagi, and we've barely seen them together, so stop it. So stop it, or I won't. Right? And also kind of with that too, I will say, there was a note in this comment that was like talking about Bachara trying to cheer Reen up, and Bachara noted that Reen seems sad, and I was like, yes, we talked about that in the discussion. But the comment was saying, you know, if you go back to episode 12, Bachara said that, you know, Reo looked really sad after Nagi left, and I was like, I get a little worried. I trust Wim because they're my moderator, but I'm like, if you're spoiling that Reen is sad because Sai has left him behind and gone to live the world of soccer, and Reen is upset because he's been left behind the shadow and he's working his way back up to his brother for that reason. If I just got spoiled on that because of that comment, I'm going to be a little frustrated. So I think some people are trying to jump the gun a little bit about Reen, so I'm just putting a little friendly warning out there. Maybe let's not talk about Reen anymore. Unless it's brought up in the episode, and even if I talk about it in the discussion, let's just black box it in the spoilers. You know, spoiler tag it in the Discord and let me not read it, because I'm sadly getting the impression that I'm getting a little spoiled on Reen, or people are really pushing a lot of fan art with Reen, a lot of stuff that I'm like, I don't know hardly anything about him yet, and I feel like I'm getting a little spoiled about him. So just FYI, right? And I really am hoping that that's not the case. That it's not that Reen was left behind by his brother Sai and he's trying to catch up to him to fulfill the brotherly bonds. Like, that would have been nice to find out on my own. And if that comment was kind of spoiling that, then I'll feel really sad about it later and be like, that sucks. But hopefully not. Hopefully it's not the case. And it's just an observation, right? Just a casual observation that means nothing, right? And then finally, Barou and Reen training diligently and getting others to join. Well, Isagi did the exact same thing in episode 2. So it's yeah, there is a constant thing about when people practice and get motivated to be better, others will follow along suit. And that is the one thing with sports anime that I have seen in other sports anime with Blue Lock, is that there is the, oh, if you work hard, others will join. Ace of the Diamond does the same thing. When Sawamura gets all like into training and he gets his tire around him, he goes running, other people in the team join him because they're like, well, there must be something to it. Maybe I need to join as well. So that is probably the only sports anime thing that really stands out that I've seen in other sports anime with Blue Lock. But for the most part, I enjoy Blue Lock because it's so fresh. But I know that, speaking of Ace of the Diamond, it's important that we don't skip our weekly dose of the ads supporting this series. So before we dive any further into Blue Lock, let's have a look.
Yes, in the world of Blue Lock, it's a big goal to become top dog of their profession as soccer players. But you know another series where being top dog is important? Why, Ace of the Diamond. Yes, in Ace of the Diamond, Sawamura is also striving to be top dog of his own team by becoming Ace of Sado. So, when you're done watching Blue Lock, why not go watch another series where becoming top dog is a goal of the main character? Now, back to the reaction.
I've talked enough. I've talked enough about old Blue Lock comments and everything. Thank you all so much. It's just funny with Reen. Everybody's like, you need to like him. And I'm like, the more you push me to like him, the less I will. Just let it be like Raichi. I really like Raichi now because people left me alone and let me draw my own conclusions. But y'all, you're rabid. Rabid fan base. Stop it. So I am really hyper to find out what is going to happen with this episode and what the conclusion is going to be. I don't know. They're going to probably take this whole damn episode to find out, but I'm really excited to see where it goes. So we shall see. But in any case, I hope y'all are excited. I definitely am too, but we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to start episode 18 of Blue Lock and see what we get. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Whew. I need some hydration after that episode. Oh my god. The hype with Blue Lock. The hype with Blue Lock is real, y'all. The hype is real. I loved this episode. I loved it. It was so good. There's so much to talk about. I want to go back to Henri's journal and read all of her little side notes and tidbits. Ego does not deserve her. He does not deserve her. His tall, slender man business. He's just like, Henri-chan. I was like, bitches, she is taking care of you, sir. She wakes you up at 6:30 every morning. She gets up an hour early to do her own yoga and get ready to pick your slender man ass up. Sir, you need to be grateful. I ship them so hard, but he does not deserve her. She is out of his league. He's just probably got huge talents, and that's why she deals with him. Oh my god. So yeah, this episode was wonderful. I loved this, and I loved it because it did something that, it subverted the stereotype, what you think is going to happen in such a cool way with Barou, because you think that Barou is an asshole. He is. And a lot of people have been like, how can you not like Reen, but you like Barou? And I'm like, there's just something about, again, the Alyssa Edwards in me is like, if you're going to be a bowdy bitch, own up to it. And don't be weak sauce. And Barou is that. He's an asshole. But there's something about him that is intriguing to me. And I've met people like Barou in real life, and you've met people like Barou in real life, I'm sure. And there's just something about him. I'm like, he's so unapologetic in how much of an asshole he is, that there's just something almost endearing about it. It's like, I like a bad boy. I like in fiction, not in real life. Now in real life, I don't think I could stand Barou for 2 seconds. But in fictional characters, I do like a bad boy. And I like a bad boy that knows he's a bad boy and owns up to it. And he's like, yes, I know. And the idea of him being self-aware and saying, I'm going to become the villain on the field. Yes, please. Hell yes. Absolutely. Because I do love that. And I love that there's not really any pretentiousness with Barou. It's just, he's like, this is how it is. And this is the way I think. And if you don't like it, well, too bad. And it's like, okay, fine. But and I love Isagi. Isagi is so great because he gets that's Isagi's whole point. Isagi wanted Barou to evolve. That's kind of let's talk about Isagi up here. That's kind of what I love about Isagi, is that part of his adaptability is that he wants to adapt when players are at their best, right? He's like, I want you at your best because I'm going to adapt from you. I want to adapt to something that's golden, not something that's crusty. So there. He's like, if I'm going to adapt to you and be on your level, then you need to be at a pretty damn high level so that we'll be able to win this game. So I like that. And that kind of ties to, interestingly enough, it ties to Bachara, who Bachara wants his fellow teammates and his opponents or rivals at that same high level. Right? So Bachara's like, I want you, Reen, to play with me and us to be great. And he's like, Isagi, if you want me, come and claim me. But you better be damn good. Like, I love it so much. It's like, mwah, mwah, mwah. Love it. I think one of the reasons that Reen kind of throws me off is that, or turns me off in a way, is because Reen doesn't really care like that. Like, Isagi wants the people that he encounters to play at their best and be the best, and he believes they have that potential. And one thing I like about Isagi is that he sees with Barou, he's like, I picked you because you have all of this potential to evolve and be amazing. But Isagi's struggle the last couple of episodes was he was like, he's not a team player, first of all. We'll put Barou over here. He's like, first of all, Barou is not a team player. No, he's not going to pass the ball. But the worst part is that not only it's like a bad combination on bad combination. He's like, he's not only not a good team player because he doesn't want to be a team player, but he wasn't good enough to match what Chigiri was throwing down and what Kunigami and Reo were doing throwing down. It wasn't being good enough. And Nasagi's like, I'm going at it the wrong way. If I keep pushing Barou to be the supporting character, that's never going to happen. He's not going to do it, and he's just going to get even more antagonistic and get even more distanced, and it's not going to help anyone. So at some point, Isagi's like, well, Barou's not evolving. He's not living up to his potential. So in order to, I'm just going to make it happen. He's like, I'm just going to become the predator and make Barou the prey, and I'm just going to devour him, and that's what I'm going to have to do. And he's either going to shut down or he's going to rise up and evolve. And I think that the entire time Isagi knew what was going to happen. He knew Barou was going to evolve because that's the potential he saw in him. And he just had to find a way to make Barou realize it. And what I love about characters like Bachira and Isagi is that their whole idea is they want to build up their team to be the best. I think that what throws me off with Reen is that Reen doesn't seem to care about that at all. And again, Reen is like Barou in that he only cares about himself in this moment, getting to face his brother. That's his goal. He wants to be the best because of that, and this is just a trajectory or a means to expedite that process. And so he's doing whatever he can, seemingly. I'm just basing it off assumptions from the episode so far, to get there. But my thing about it is, it almost seems to me like Reen doesn't care about so much. I'm curious to know, and I don't want an answer to this question. Obviously, we're going to find out in the show. But I'm going to be very curious as to what Reen's end goal is. Because right now, it just seems like his end goal is to beat his brother. Now, if by beating his brother, it's becoming Japan's best striker, okay, cool. But is that it? Because that seems kind of... self-serving is not the right word because they're all kind of self-serving. But you know what I mean? It's like if Reen seems like he's eating and breathing soccer and it's life or death, like what Ego was talking about. But then you have Isagi and the others whose goals seemingly that we know of are to become the best striker, to go on and play for Japan and do all this. Does Reen even want to play for Japan? Does Reen even care about playing for Japan? We don't know that yet. We don't know enough about Reen's character. And I'm going to be patient and wait till we find that out. But right now, it seems like his only goal is to be his brother. And I'm like, well, cool, but what do you do after that? And that's kind of my thing. Like, Isagi, the way that him and Bachira are thinking and acting is like that of a national Japanese team player. Is that you're making your teammates as good as you and on your level so you all can individually score and dominate. With Reen, if Reen doesn't care about his team at all, I mean, I guess that's fine, but it's like, it's not intriguing to me, right? In the way that others are. And we'll talk about Barou in this, but I'm getting off track. But Barou just being like, I'm supposed to be the king of the field. And then we get baby Barou! Oh my god. So when he was like, I am supposed to be the king and the lead player. I'm supposed to be the king of the field. I'm the lead. And baby Barou looks like just a little old man. It's so cute where he's like, well, and I like his little uniform says king on it. It's super cute. He's also number 10, which number 10 and 11 are constantly like well-known. They are well-known numbers for anime protagonists like Haikyuu 10 and 11, Slam Dunk 10 and 11, number 11 in Ace of the Diamond on baseball. But the 10 and 11 jerseys are usually like your main character jerseys. So of course, Barou has a number 10, which is hilarious to me. But yeah, he starts out and he's just like, by being the best, the other people acknowledged his greatness and decided to follow his lead. And there is a part of Barou in this flashback that you kind of wonder, you're like, has he always just been kind of a brat that was never, he was like kind of like a brat that was never served humble pie ever before. And he kind of, I know people like this. That's kind of like the phrase that we use in my area of the world is a big fish in a little pond. Is the phrase that you start out, you're the star soccer player of your school and everybody reveres you and you're like, I'm the protagonist, I'm the lead character. And then you go out beyond that little pond to a bigger pond and you discover that you're still good, but there are people better than you. Right? And when that happens, how are you going to react to that? And people like Ego talks about, which we'll talk about his speech, people either usually react one of two ways. They either adapt, like Isagi, and get better and evolve to match that, which is what Barou ends up doing, or they cave into that despair and they accept that they aren't as good as the others they're up against and they fall into that supporting role, which is what he almost did. And I was actually rooting for him not to do it because I was like, no, part of this whole thing is becoming your own lead character on the field, but then we can have a whole field of lead characters and nobody's a side character. That's kind of the point, right? That's kind of the point of all this, is that we don't want anyone on the field to be a side character. That's the problem, is that we fall into, we're not strong enough individually that when we have side characters, they can't measure up against another team that doesn't have that. So the idea is that we don't have side characters. Everyone are all leads. Which then the problem becomes, if everybody's a lead, then how do you all, you would think theoretically too many cooks in the kitchen, what happens when they're all leads? And that's kind of what Isagi is trying to figure out. He's like, he wants to be able to have the best players on the field that can adapt and handle any situation against any team they're up against, right? Which is why he needs Bachra again, because Batra's a pretty all-round character. Batra's pretty rounded. He can pretty much do anything you want him to. He's great at dribbling, but he also can act in a lot of other roles as well. So he would be very ideal to have back on the team, right? Which is curious. I would not be surprised if Isagi challenges Batra's and Rin's team again. I won't be surprised if Isagi chooses Rin. And I know a lot of you are like, oh, that's such shipping material. But hear me out. Because Bachra and Isagi both want to be Japan's next top striker. And I could see Isagi and them facing the team, and he'd be like, I want Rin because I want to adapt to Rin. I want to devour him and figure out his abilities. And there's so much vor and cannibalism metaphors in this series. And I could see Bachra being like, touche. All right. I see it. And then they have this angsty foreplay relationship where it's all sexual tension. I'll make it shippy somehow, right? I also realized watching this little montage of Barou doing all his little exercises, Barou is a lot like, he's the dark version of Bokudo, right? From Haikyuu, because Bokudo was this big star, and he stands out, and he's, like all this. And sometimes Bokudo, he has all this power, but it doesn't get honed in like it should be, like Barou's attacks in the early part of this episode. But Barou is so laser focused on being the top shining star of the field, kind of like Bokudo is, but Barou's is like, has this like darkness to it, whereas Bokudo is like innocence, right? I thought that was really, really interesting, and I liked that. And he's like, I didn't like soccer. I like the inner monologues we get with Barou. I also like at the very end when he's like, let me tell you my story. And then Nagi just like he crosses his legs and he's like, yes, let's hear the story. They're all precious little angel babies off the court. They're like the most demonic, twisted characters on the field. And the moment the game's over, they're like, innocent angel babies. And you're like, what is happening? So, but I like this monologue where he's like, I don't like soccer because it makes me feel like a king. That's not it. No. And he's like, it's not just because I like the sport itself. No, it's because he's like, I liked it because I could grab someone who dedicated their whole life to soccer and drag them off the stage and out of the spotlight. That's such a bitch move! Like, his whole thing is he likes stealing the show. He likes stealing the show. And it's that competitive attitude that's like, oh my God, like, it's kind of sadist. He's like, I like seeing people suffer and lose. And it's like, oh. But I respect Barou for being self-aware and saying it. I respect. Everybody likes a villain. And that's what he is. He's the villain. And he knows it. And I'm all about it. I'm like, yes, please. If you are self-aware and this is what you are and you are what you say you are, sure. Okay, I'm here for it. Let's do this. And I love that he views, Nagi and Isagi as being like, at first he didn't think they were taking it seriously enough and they were just being annoying. But then he realizes that they are strong characters. And I like that Barou kind of goes through this montage of all the times he like kind of got onto Isagi being like, you have no talent, you know this. And then he's kind of like, well, shit. No, he does. I was wrong. But Barou will never say that. Barou would never say he's wrong. No, that's not going to happen. So instead, we have our opening, our OP. Yes. Meanwhile, Isagi's just like, okay, what do we do? What do we do this? And he does the direct shot, which misses, right? Because he's getting too worked up, right? I like that Nagi calls him Kunigami Gains-kun, because Kunigami's doing all the sit-ups and the reps and being all buff. Love that. Love that Nagi says that about him. And then I love that when Isagi gets in the zone, guys, when Isagi gets in the zone, it's hilarious because he's like doing Minority Report, like calculating all these things and it's happening. And you're like, oh, Isagi. I like that Nagi at this point has just accepted it. Nagi's just like, nah, I get it. Nagi's so good with the flow. He's like, you do you, man. I'll be over here scoring goals. Thanks, bro. It's hilarious. I love it. But Barou's like, I can hit the shot. Let me do it. And I like that Barou has to get drugged through the mud. So he's like, what do I do when I'm not in range? And here was my thing. This was the thing that I was waiting for. What I thought was going to happen before Sagi's green light shows up, and it's amazing. What I thought was going to happen was that Barou was going to see that he was too short in the shot. He wasn't going to make it in time. And I thought that was going to be the moment of Barou's evolution, that he was going to get to where he was too far out of the shot, but he was going to take it anyway. Now, in hindsight, that would have been too similar to the last go-round. So, no, of course not. But instead, no, Isagi comes out of nowhere like a monster. And the way that Isagi's voice actor off the court is like, oh, please, sir, won't you join our harem? And then on the court, he's like, give me the ball. It's like, his voice actor was amazing in this episode. Isagi's voice actor was just like, give me the ball. And I'm like, yes, sir. What else would you like from me, sir? Even Shigiri was like, the fudge? And Nagi was like, yeah, and Rei was like, why? And then Barou just falls down and Isagi takes the shot. And now here's the thing. And he's like, that was a nice pass, donkey. And you would think that Isagi's being mean. But one, Barou's been an ass to him this whole time. He's literally been a donkey this entire time to Isagi. But two, Isagi knows the only way to put Barou in his place and make him evolve is to make him eat a big old slice of humble pie and be like, are you going to put up or are you going to shut up? What's it going to be? And kudos to Isagi for realizing that and making him do it. I was like, oh, but it was like, oh, just that look. He's like, you need to move so I can score. He's like, I'm going to treat you the exact same way you treat everyone else so you can see how it goes. And I love that we have the effect of like everything just smashing around Barou. Barou's face when he passed the ball to him was absolutely, that was like the best face. It was beautiful. It was terrifying, but it was just, And Barou's just like, what is happening? And he's like, is this defeat? And he realizes how all those others have felt around him in that moment. And I like the concept of the crossroads. We'll talk about it. So the moment that Chigiri and Kunigami and Reo start having this talk about what to do, I felt like their whole actions and stuff were pinpointing that they were going to lose this, right? And the reason I say this is they're like, okay, keep Isagi from getting the ball at all costs. They're like, we will score the next goal and win, but if they get it, we'll lose. They were already accounting for the fact that they were going to lose and being like, if we let him, the moment they said, if we let Isagi get the ball, we lose, like that mentality, I was like, no, you can't think that way, guys. You gotta be like, how are we going to do this? It's like their teamwork was actively holding them back. And so they have this plan of what to do, being like, we're going to win this. And what I think is going to happen is that Chigiri is going to get picked. Because Chigiri evolved out of the three of them. One. I think Chigiri was the only one that evolved out of the three. Kunigami and Reo have to have their evolutions if they're even going to happen. I think Kunigami's will. I don't think Rio's will. I will explain that. But I think Chigiri's going to get chosen. I think Chigiri is the one that's evolved, but Chigiri is also the one that kind of has been able, Chigiri has faced defeat face to face and has evolved from it. They've adapted to it, and that's what Isagi wants, right? That's what he wants. I feel like Kunigami is not going to get picked because I think this episode pointed out that Kunigami needs to grow. Like at some point during this match, Kunigami just resigned to the fact that they weren't going to give him the ball. He was like, well, they're not going to pick me to give the ball to, so I guess all I can do is help them get the ball to Chigiri. That ain't Blue Lock. No, Blue Lock's about you pulling a Barou and evolving past that point of defeat. And Kunigami kind of gave up a little bit in this episode. He didn't fight for the ball. He was like, well, we've got a plan. Let's stick to the plan. Well, I think Ego's whole point is that Japan usually sticks to a plan and it doesn't pay off. They don't need to be that way. They need to get to the point where their plans are something that each individual person kind of runs for themselves. So that's why I think they're going to pick Chigiri. And then Reo doesn't have a skill set that they don't already have. They kind of have Isagi already. They don't need Reo. So I think it's going to be Chigiri that they pick to be the one to advance with them. And I think Kunigami is going to evolve and grow because of this defeat. Because now they're at the crossroads, right? Chigiri, I think, will be able to adapt and overcome. But it's like, what will Reo and what will Kunigami do? So while we're on the subject of it, I think that we're going to end up with Isagi, Nagi, Barou, and Chigiri. Or we will call them, if we have Chigiri, Isagi, Nagi, and Barou, they are team Cinnamon Buns. Cinnamon Buns. That's their team. They're going to go get Cinnamon Buns. And then, yeah, we're going to call that, right? Okay, that'll work. And then, or now all they need is Ren to be Cribbin or Bachara to be, I don't know. We'll figure that one out. But anyway, so that's what I think is going to happen. Then we're going to have Reo and Kunigami over here. Now, I honestly think that what's going to happen is Reo and Kunigami, they may end up getting Nico, maybe? Maybe they'll get Nico, and maybe they'll face Gin and Raichi and the one brother there, and maybe they'll pick Raichi. I don't know. Maybe these three will face off against, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I don't think that, I don't think Reo is going to make it to the second selection. I don't think so. I could be pleasantly wrong, but I think Reo is going to make it. He's not going to be picked for this next group. And I think he's going to just despair, and I think he's just going to get kicked out. I think Kunigami will make it past the second selection. I think Kunigami will advance and find his way back to Isagi and them in the final rounds, but I don't think Reo is. I think Reo is going to end up being out of the system by the end of it. I don't want him to be because I like Reo and Nagi, but I don't know. I just don't get good vibes. Reo was so hyper-focused on revenge and Nagi in this, and Nagi's not even worried about it. I don't know. I love Reo's character so much. I don't want him to leave Blue Lock, but to me, things aren't looking good for him. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I love also that as Isagi is planning out all of these ideas, He's like, look, here's what I like that Isagi's like, here's what each of our individual opponents can do. So we just need to find ways to get around them and just think on our feet. Isagi's more kind of spontaneity play instead of Reo is like a tactician, right? I also love that as Isagi's thinking and all the puzzle pieces are going around his head, Nagi's just like, oh, you got a plan? Okay. Nagi just lets it happen. At this point, he's just like, I can't stop you. Sure, go ahead. But then he's like, do we tell Barou? And Isagi's like, nope. We're just going to let him go. He's been dethroned. It's like, nope. It's pointless to say anything to a dethroned king. And it's like, nope, you and I are going to decide how this play turns out. And I don't blame Isagi for saying that because, one, every time he's tried to involve Barou in the plays, Barou doesn't listen. And so he's like, no, forget that. Screw that. We've tried that. That didn't work. And two, he's like, he knows that Barou is literally sitting like in the fetal position and crumpled in the turf. He ain't gonna be in any position to listen to them right now. He's like going through an existential crisis over there. And Isagi's like, Nagi, I've been there. He's like, Nagi, I've been through that existential crisis mode. Just let him be. He'll come out of it. Just wait. But also, I'm like, Barou just nearly costing them the game by just jumping in on it. No, I don't blame him at all for not telling him that play. He's just like, let it go. And then this was the point where I was like, I knew they were going to lose, was when he was like looking over at Kunigami, but he was like, no, we need Shigiri. It's like Reo couldn't make a play for himself that should have been an option, and Kunigami couldn't make it work for himself. They had to rely on Shigiri, and that was the problem. At that point, I was like, okay, Shigiri's going to get picked, and you two aren't going to advance yet. You guys got some growing up to do. And maybe Reo will evolve. Maybe Reo will have some cosmic black hole ability that we don't even know about that will counter Nagi somehow. I would like that. I want Reo to go on. But, you know, if Reo doesn't make it through Blue Lock, he can always take his family's billion-dollar corporation and sponsor Nagi for the rest of his life. I mean, you know, somebody's got to be the breadwinner. But yeah, that part where, this point here, though, where they were marking Chigiri and Kunigami noticed it. The moment that Kunigami said this line, he's like, what do we do? And he said, I'm not a threat, huh? The moment he said that, I was like, oh, Kunigami has got some growing to do. He has some self-discovery to do to get to where he is a threat, right? So that's why I think he needs to go through an arc. And maybe they will pick him. I don't know. Maybe they will pick Kunigami and maybe Isagi. The only reason I could see them picking Kunigami would be to appease Barou and to give Barou something to kind of latch onto team-wise. But I think Barou at this point is happy being a villain, so they're probably like, nah, let's pick Chigiri because he's the strongest one out of the three. I don't know. Also, I mean, Isagi and Nagi have similar hair, but we need our long hair boys on the same team. I need an additional time where Barou and Chigiri compare hair products, and they're like comparing how they make their hair stand up or be luscious. I need that. I really do. But then yeah, and then we have the whole situation with Barou where he's like thinking about what to do. And I think Nagi's plan of intercepting the ball was the most logical thing to do because he knows he can't outrun Chigiri. So Nagi's like, well, then I'll just cut the middleman out, cut corners and go straight to the ball. Forget this. That makes the most sense. And Nagi is about working smarter, not harder. Nagi's like, whatever I can do to work less, sure, and maximize effort. I also love this moment because it shows that Reo knows Nagi so well, and it works to Reo's disadvantage because Reo, it's almost like he gets intimidated by Nagi because he knows Nagi is good, and he's just like, well, I can't beat Nagi if he does this. And I'm like, that is your first mistake. I feel like Reo's growing has to be to get better than to Nagi, to where he doesn't have to rely on Nagi and he doesn't have to fear Nagi. Because right now he thinks Nagi's better than him. And I'm like, then you're not going to advance any further if that's the case, you know? And that's where we go. And I love that Isagi was getting a little bit villain monologue-y though when he was like, this was our plan. And Reo was like, what are you talking about? Isagi can be, if you didn't watch this series from the first episode and you didn't see Isagi off the court, you would think he's like this top tier Shakespearean villain. But then off the court, Isagi's like, do you want to be friends? It's like, I love Isagi. I really do. He's so fun. And then Nagi just pulling in that weight, using his like gravity-defying cleats. The way his mouth was like this during that moment, that was insane. And then meanwhile, Barou gets the ball. And it's like, what are we going to do? Meanwhile, Barou has all this inner monologuing going on. You'd think that Kunigami would have gotten the ball from him before now, but you know what? It's happening in milliseconds, so we'll forgive it. But during this part here, I was rooting for Barou to evolve. I wanted Barou, because, Barou's an asshole, yes, but just like we root for Isagi to evolve, and just like we cheered Shigiri on when they evolved, I didn't want Barou to be left out in the dust. I wanted him to evolve too, because that's fun to root for somebody in evolving, right? And in this moment, Barou was the underdog, which is the crazy thing, right? He was the underdog in this moment, and you always kind of want to root for the underdog because you can relate to them in a lot of ways. And I was like, come on, Barou, you can pick yourself up out of the pit. And then you think it's going to be this inspirational moment where he picks himself out of the pit and becomes a hero, but he's like, fuck that, I'm gonna become the villain! It's like, it's Barou's villain origin story! Yes! Alright! Go! I love it. The sense of defeat can only be salvaged. We can win with my past. But then, I like this because in this moment, Barou relates a lot to Isagi. Like Isagi back in episode 1, Isagi was like, if I pass, we can win. But then he thinks, well, what if I took it for myself? Then Barou is Isagi's realization from episode 1 on steroids, where Barou has that same moment of being like, well, I could pass and maybe we could win, but screw that. I want the goal to be my own. And Isagi came to that conclusion episodes ago, but Barou's having his own revelation now. Also, I said in the Discord, Nagi is this like pink cosmic energy, and Isagi is this lime green energy, and Barou is like, and for a split second, Barou looks like this orangey yellow bright light, so it almost looks like sherbet. But no, he's red. His energy is red. He's a villain, right? And his whole, I love like the weight of defeat. Like I love that all of the regrets inside of him are keeping him from passing that ball, because it's like once you pass that ball to Isagi, you've conceded defeat. You have conceded defeat to Isagi. You are no longer the lead. You are going to be the supporting role. And that image of him and him seeing his future and him seeing like the Japanese team playing and then him cracking the beer open. And it's like, there's him and you see like the salaryman suit, like his suit, like he goes to work. And he just like has the TV and he's just in his sweatpants with his 5 o'clock shadow. And he sees Isagi on the screen playing, and he's like, I don't want that. I'm like, yes! Yes! And the thing about it is, if Barou becomes one of the strikers for Japan's national team, he could be on the same field at the same time as Isagi. It's this idea of them all making each other better through their rivalry with one another. Like, that's what it is. And respect. I love that. And that's what Isagi wanted. He's like, the path I see. And Nagi's like, I didn't know he could do that. And he just takes the ball for his own. And like the idea that he has this twisted, like he does consecutive chops and like all these crazy soccer moves. And it's this twisted, gnarled pathway. And there's the thing, like Nagi's is this clean celestial energy. And Barou is just like this warped, twisted, briar like trail. It's amazing. I freaking love it. He's evolving in the match. I'm like, well, Chigiri evolved too, so you know. And then he's like, he's like, my twisted path for my goal. I'll be a villain to get there. And then Chigiri's like, they're devouring each other. I love it. Yeah. We're gonna keep gnawing at each other. Gnawing at the heels. I like that Nagi's like, is he just gonna get past them all? Okay, whatever. I love it. He's like, if you're the lead, then I'll be the villain that devours your light. I'm like, yes! He's like, fine, Isagi, you want to be the lead? Be the lead, but I'm going to be the demon king. So you want to be the king of light? I'll be the demon king of darkness. Let's go. I freaking love it. I love that shot of him kicking the ball. I'm going to get a screenshot of this real quick. of him kicking it. It's probably gonna be the thumbnail, is him as the Demon King. Yes. And I love that Isagi and Nagi are like, welcome back, King. Good. Glad you're on the other end of it, right? Man, the looks of despair. Holy shit. Like, Chigiri's like, I'm probably getting picked, so I don't look that despairing. Ryo looks devastated. Kunigami looks devastated. Chigiri's like, I'm probably getting picked. It's fine. I have such faith that Chigiri's gonna get picked. Watch Ryo get picked next episode. Watch that happen. That's not gonna happen. But watch that happen, right? And then Barou's like, I am the king. The stage for the lead is such a double entendre there, because it's like there is the stage, like an acting stage, for the lead player in the play, which is relating to Barou being the king and now he's the villain. There's that, but there's also the stage metaphorically is being set for them to take the lead in the game. So it's working on multiple levels. I'm here for it. I'm digging it. Yes, please. And then they win. And I like that Isagi goes to high five him and he's like, you admit you're wrong. And Isagi's like, yes, I was wrong. I was doing all this to force you to evolve. I'm sorry. I gave you a Firestone Eevee. I'm really sorry. Also, fact, if Isagi was a Pokemon, Isagi would be an Eevee, 1000%. I am fully convinced that Barou is Growlithe. Now he's an Arcanine. Having fun time. Nagi is Mew. Nagi is Mew. For sure. He's just like little Mew bouncing around. Absolutely. But Asagi's an Eevee. Is Reen a Gyarados? Maybe? Reen would be a Gyarados. Let's make Reen Gyarados. Yes, let's do that. Let's do that. Would that make Psy Dragonite? Maybe. Possibly. I'll have to think on that one. But yeah. And he called him Isagi, though. I love Nagi's like, high five denied. He's like, should have tried to fist bump him, bro. He's like, am I a donkey? He's like, no, I was wrong. And he's like, being around you throws me off my guard. It's like, yeah. I love that Nagi's just like, victory leap. And he just knocks him over. He's like, we won. Nagi hasn't got to say we won in a while. He's excited. I also would be Nagi. I would try to jump on Barou's back. Not for any particular reason, but just literally to celebrate. I like Isagi being like, come on, Nagi, man. He's like, those chops were awesome. I'm like, Barou, take the compliment. Take the compliment and go. I also like that Barou gets on the stage. It's like he's on a Shakespearean stage and the spotlight's on him. He's like, let me have this soliloquy. Let me give you the soliloquy about my journey. And Isagi and Nagi are like, okay. I love it. It's so stupid and I love it. But they're like, all right. And then he basically says everything. And I like that Nagi's like, well, yeah, the other team was pretty strong, so it makes sense. And then I like that meanwhile Isagi is like, so that's how the chop dribbling was born. Nagi's working out all the statistics, all of the legalese, all of the technique and everything. And Nagi's like, okay. Freaking love it. It's great. And so then, yeah. And he's like, I'll never lose to you again, Isagi. And Isagi's like, cool, great. Then help us win. Nice. And I love it. And he's like, don't call me Hasselman, call me Nagi. And he's like, can it pass? Mirror. Meanwhile, we get a fist bump from those two. It's fun. Team White wins, and Henri is checking it out. I love it. And she acknowledges that Barou's pretty talented, right? Meanwhile, Ego is literally eating like L levels of... He sits his chair weird like L, and he's eating all of this ramen instead of all this cake. Like, I feel like Ego and L are related. I feel like, is Ego, like from Death Note, is he E? Can we say that he's E if L is L? Can we do that? I feel like that is appropriate. And then he goes on and talks about what you take from defeat. And he's like, many average Joes don't carve this despair into their mind, and that's important. Oh my God. So this whole speech about how you handle defeat was so good. And I was just sitting there like, popcorn, eat it up. Oh my God, yes. Because that's so true. It's like whenever you're faced with a hurdle and defeat, it's like the one thing is you learn from it. You can learn, adapt, and evolve, which is what Barou and Isagi have done so far, and Chigiri and all that. Or the other route that you can do is that you refuse and make excuses. You refuse and make excuses when you're handed defeat. And he's like, that makes you a loser. And then you're unaware of doing so. You don't realize you're doing it. And you're like, oh, this is just the beginning. And that's right. There's no game over in life. And then in order not to feel like it's been a waste, you trick yourselves into thinking that not giving up is the right answer. So basically, like, to in order for there to not be a waste, I love the term dream doping. That is so good. Yes, that is so good. And I teach and I do advisement at a college level, and I find so many students that they start a program, like let's say nursing, for example. They start a nursing program and then they get into these classes and they aren't able to complete them. They're just not, they either realize it's not what they want to do, or they just can't complete them. They just don't have the skill. And a lot of them feel like, well, then everything I've done is a waste. And it's like, you can view it that way, or you can take what you've learned and try to adapt and evolve from it. And that's not the best example because there's so many other factors like money and time, etc., blah, blah, with it. But I do see a lot of students that they just make excuses for why things don't work out instead of learning from it. Like, I have a lot of students in my English class that they don't get a paper turned in. And instead of just learning from that mistake, moving on, adapting and evolving, they'll be like, well, this is why it didn't work out, and I can't do this, and then you can do that. And then it starts to snowball, and it just gets worse. And it's like, instead of just trying to like stay stuck in this one moment, like move beyond it. And that's kind of what Ego's saying here, right? I love how he describes this. The concept of dream doping is so good, where he's like, their goal used to be achieving their dream, but now their goal is the act of chasing after it. So it's like, yeah, instead of achieving a dream, it's just chasing it. Now, there is something to be said, because let's be realistic for a hot second. Like, the one thing that's kind of sad is that they have the live street performance, the 15th anniversary, where they're just, or chasing after the dream, or there's one where it's like a mangaka, and it's like, is this a little bit self-aware? There is something about it, because no offense, but not everybody's going to be an NBA player, right? And so the idea of, okay, well, and I guess maybe what Ego is saying is that if your dream was to become an NBA player and then you realize you're not going to be able to do it, instead of just admitting that dream isn't going to work out and giving up on it and doing something else that you find talent in that makes you successful, you keep chasing after it. I guess the most realistic example would be like a guy who couldn't become an NBA player, so he ends up becoming like not a coach, but like a community basketball guy, and like is obsessed with just that. I don't know if that's a good example or not, but I get what Ego's saying, right? The act of chasing after it. Yeah, and he's like, I don't have interest in garbage who continue to fool themselves by clinging onto the ghost of a dream. So my question is, with Ego, he talks about he has no interest in garbage that chase and cling onto this ghost of a dream. So what's Ego's story? Because obviously Ego lives and breathes soccer. Obviously, though, he's not playing it. So what happened to Ego to get him to the point where, has Ego given up on the dream and this is his in lieu of it? Or is Ego, is he not aware that he's kind of doing what that is? I don't know. We don't know enough about Ego. What we do know about Ego is that he's sitting in that chair without socks on, and it's kind of gross. And he's eaten 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things of ramen. And Henri's like, where does all this food go? So I'm so curious about Ego's future, what we're going to find out about him, because why is he doing this? What's his story? I don't know. That's why defeat is the crossroads for your dream. So, I mean, Ego has obviously experienced defeat at some point. The question is when and why. He's like, what's needed is the strength to realize you're powerless in that moment, which is clearly something he's experienced because he can talk about it. The ability to feel despair And there's a path you can only see when you've given up on the path of your dream. And that's when you get to evolve. So, I mean, Ego has clearly been at this point, but what's his story? We're going to obviously have to wait on that one. And he's like, now, all you losers, you're at your crossroads. What are you going to do? And Shigiri is thinking, like, if I was able to get that pass, I could have won. And he's like, I wasn't good enough. And Kunigami is thinking, I wasn't good enough either. I didn't stand a chance when they showed their true strength. So, like, Kunigami and Shigiri are both realizing we weren't strong enough. We need to get stronger. But Reo just says, I lost. Why did I even bother? I don't feel good about Reo. I love Reo's character so much, but I don't feel, my hopes for him are like, oof, I don't know. And then they're like, now we have to make a decision. I liked that Isagi's like, yes, to beat Reen. I like that he's like, we gotta beat Bowser, who's Reen. And then we gotta win Bachira back, who's our Princess Peach. Right? He's like, I want to devour Reen and then save her. Look. Isagi's like, Reen is the burger I want to chow down on, but Bachira is the sweet honey I want to have afterwards as dessert. You know, why not? OT3, can we have that? Can we do that? Sure. He's like, the teammate I need. And then I like Reo is in the middle looking absolutely concerned. And Kunigami's like looking concerned too. And Shigiri's looking over like, if they pick any of these two bastards, I'm gonna have words. Shigiri doesn't look concerned. He just looks like, you better not be picking those Starburst. I'm the one you want. Reo and Kunigami look absolutely terrified. So we'll see how that goes. But I want to go back and look at Henri's little diary because I think this is absolutely adorable. This is my favorite. This may be one of my favorite, not my favorite, but one of my favorite of the additional times where it's just her little blue lock journal. Let's see. So her thing is, I want to read all the little notes. She's like, I do pigeon pose. I wake up, I check my emails, do morning yoga. I wake up usually at 6 a.m. 5:30 is awfully early, but she goes to bed a lot earlier than me, so sure thing. She's like, I do my morning yoga, and then she's like, at 6:30 I wake up Ego-san, and then she's like, Ego-san in the morning, mumble, mumble, mumble. I love that he does the bedhead, his little glasses, he's mumbling in his sleep. Also, like, girl has access to Ego's room. Why aren't they married? What is this? What is this? She also cleans his room. Ego, you don't deserve her. What the fudge? And then she says, 7:30, I have breakfast. I have boiled water ready for Ego's instant noodle cups. He doesn't deserve her, right? At 9 a.m., she checks the player health data. I meet with Ego-san. Her notes are, don't argue with him. He'll rebuke everything, so just accept it. And he's like, lock off. Yes. Girl, he doesn't realize how whipped he is. Because she not only knows how to handle him, she knows how to cook for him and clean for him. Ego, you don't even know, dude. Maybe he does know. Oh my God. 10 a.m. she checks the progress of the selection. 10:30 it says she updates the personal data on each player. Now there's a little part here that says you process the player data on running distance, form, muscle mass from the bodysuits, and data from the games. So Ego-san can check growth and changes. She's doing all the work for him. He's just eating ramen noodles and just being philosophical. What? Come on now. And then 12:30 is lunch. Don't forget the hot water for his damn noodles. Oh my God. And then she says, our target's winning the World Cup. So she studies soccer, reading all the books on tactics and mental training. Aw, I love her. Snack time depends on the mood, gummies or chocolate. Fair. Check the progress of the selection. Then she says, meet with Ego-san. And then says, mostly criticism, but he occasionally says something insightful, so don't miss it. Trust Ego-san. Ego, if you don't marry this woman by the end of this manga, I will judge you forever. Like, marry this woman. She is clearly the best you're ever going to get. You have no idea. And then he talks about chemical reaction. they have clearly a chemical reaction. Girl, why you put up with him, I don't know, but there must be some impressive things in them black slacks. Dude. And then she says, write up reports for the JFU about progress, expenses, etc. So the books that she has, it says everything about soccer, the dawn of Japanese soccer, soccer encyclopedia, strategies for scoring. Then it says check the health data for each player. And then at 8:30, it says end of business day. Remove makeup and relax in comfy clothes. It's a tracksuit from high school. Aww. And then dinner. Hot water for them damn noodles. And then she goes like, I like the Ego-san has the traditional futon, like the Japanese futon, and she has a bed. I'm like, fair. She's like, I'm beat. And she's like, now that I look back on it, he only eats instant cup noodles. I'm concerned about his health, right? And so she makes him some like nice vegetables and some salad. And she's like, look, Ego, here's a late night snack of stir-fried vegetables for you and broccoli salad. And he's just, the way he kind of looks over at her like, he looks like a little deer. That's like, she's like, here you go. And he's just like, oh, and then he just takes like just pepper and mayo and smothers it. And he's like, oh, this isn't half bad. She's like, I'm going to kill him. Oh my God. She reminds me a little bit of my mother. My mother makes meatloaf and then my dad and I like drown it in ketchup. And she's like, what was the point? Because it makes it taste better. She's like, you ruined everything, you jerk. And she's like, keep it together, Henri. Keep it together. It's good to hear that. Oh my God. I love it. And then she says, good night. This is for the sake of winning the World Cup. Oh my God. I really, really want Ego to realize how lucky he has it. And by the end of this manga, I want them to be together. If there's like a time skip and they're together, please let it be. I mean, she could do loads better, but Ego, you ain't going to do better than her. You better settle for that. Lock that down, dude. Oh, I can't believe they're going to make us wait. They're going to make us wait to find out who they picked. How dare they? How dare they? So, I don't know if I'm going to be able to wait till the comments for the next episode. We'll just have to see. But I will read the comments as long as there's no spoilers for this next section. But in any case, I hope you all enjoyed this reaction discussion. I cannot wait to see who they pick and what's going to be the outcome of that. But we'll find out next time. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back very soon with episode 19 of Blue Lock.